You may not believe it, but this is a strange ice coffin from 40,000 years ago. The temperature of minus 300 degrees is slowly cutting it out. When it was finished cutting, everyone's faces showed expressions of surprise, because inside the ice coffin was hiding a corpse. What made everyone even more unbelievable was that his cell display device was still in working order. Could it be that the corpse that had been frozen for 40,000 years was still alive? The scientists absolutely did not believe these illogical things. So they put the Iceman in the crematorium. After a few minutes, the shape of the Iceman also became clearer and clearer. The scientist was eager to proceed with the autopsy. Who knew? Just as he was about to get started, the Iceman moved. Immediately afterwards, a strange supernatural scene occurred. The Iceman's pupils had a reaction to the light again. This proved that he was still alive. This incident caused the emotions of the scientists to change from surprise to fear. They quickly arranged for emergency measures. After a while of struggling, the Iceman's heart rate returned to normal. The body's indicators also gradually stabilized. A prehistoric man who had been frozen for 40,000 years had miraculously come back to life because of the sleep that had lasted for 40,000 years. He woke up in a rage and began to scream, but the scientists did not know how to soothe his emotions. Fortunately, a doctor quickly took off his clothes, and when he saw someone with the same hairstyle, the Iceman finally calmed down. But his revival made the scientists see an opportunity for business, because once they had the secret of immortality, they would have a huge fortune. So the scientists measured the Iceman's body and created a private laboratory for him with a climate that resembled that of 40,000 years ago. After waking up, the Iceman still thought he was living in the past. Unexpectedly, he had been hungry for 40,000 years. And as soon as he woke up, he opened his mouth wide to eat breakfast. Not only that, he also prepared his own food. And at night he could even make a roasted dish for himself. The satisfaction with life made him not even realize that he was in a huge conspiracy. The next day, the Iceman was fishing. But unexpectedly, he caught nothing but something he had never seen before. Obviously, this thing was not food. He picked up the pipe, his eyes filled with suspicion. So he was curious and went to investigate. When he reached the end of the road, he discovered a shocking secret. The Iceman used force to open the gate. The scene before his eyes made him speechless. The clothes of his peers were completely different from his. The Iceman desperately climbed to a high place, yelling to express his dissatisfaction. At this time, the Iceman seemed to have sensed the deception. He wanted to go crazy and escape from this place. But how could the scientists let this treasure go? When a gunshot rang out, the Iceman was shot with a tranquilizer. He immediately passed out. It can be seen that the power of this gunshot was too great. The scientists could only take the Iceman back to the operating room, but this operation made them discover the secret of the Iceman's immortality. It turned out that the Iceman had been frozen for a long time, which caused his body to secrete a chemical. It is this mysterious substance that allows him to live and exist. Now that the Iceman woke up again, he found himself still in the laboratory, but this time, he knew that he was being held captive. Dr. Seppes had no choice but to go into the place himself. In order to gain the trust of the Iceman, he was unarmed, but the Iceman did not listen. He hated Seppes' presence. The Iceman shouted at Seppes to get out, but Seppes did not back down. He got closer and closer to the Iceman and tried to smile fakely. "Don't hurt Seppes, I'm fine. Don't make him angry." A white man like Seppes seemed to have won the favor of the Iceman. He checked Seppes' body all over, and when Seppes wasn't ready, he pinched his little guy hard. After confirming that the other person was a fellow, the Iceman patted his chest and spoke. At this point, Seppes only knew that the Iceman's name was Charlie. He quickly replied to his name in English. Suddenly, the drawing on Charlie's body caught Seppes' attention. He guessed that it was a bird. Charlie also confirmed it with him, pointing to the sky and saying "Weiter." This made Seppes feel confused. In order to communicate better with Charlie, a leading linguist was invited to the base. Thanks to the support of the woman, Seppes was able to have a simple conversation with Charlie very quickly. This gradually made Charlie lose his guard. The relationship between the two of them also gradually developed well from here. Seppes gave Charlie a button and Charlie also shared his food. Late at night, the two of them sat by the campfire, humming melodies and singing. Although they are 40,000 years apart, they are like a pair of close friends. Charlie at this time could not have dreamed that he would soon lose his kidney. Then that night, the scientists used Charlie for an experiment again. They wanted to quickly get the mysterious chemical, but the experiment failed. The next day, Charlie angrily questioned Seppes why he couldn't find his kidney anymore. At this point, Seppes was speechless and could only admit his crime. Charlie, after learning the truth, immediately became angry. Although he was furious, he did not have the heart to hurt Seppes. In desperation, he could only take the iron bar and aim it at his heart. He knew clearly that he would have a bad ending sooner or later. so it was better to do it himself now. But how could Seppes do that? In order to prevent Charlie from suffering any more, Seppes thought of a surprise decision. If a single man, who had been frozen for 40,000 years, suddenly woke up and met a beautiful woman for the first time, how do you think he would react? Charlie sniffed Brady from head to toe, 40,000 years ago. He had never seen a woman as beautiful as her, so he quickly took out the beetle that he liked to eat the most. This made Brady almost vomit, but the more outrageous thing is still to come. Charlie wanted to have a deeper exchange with Brady, seeing that Brady didn't listen. He took out a precious water pipe that had been carefully kept for many years. It was no surprise that he was still rejected. This made Charlie feel very sad, and he kept muttering a few words in his mouth. The scientists still didn't understand Charlie's actions. Not until they saw the drawing he drew did they realize that Charlie had mistaken Brady for his wife, because he still thought he was living in 40,000 years ago. He kept repeating his wife's name and simulating the scene of playing with his children. Then he asked Seppes where his son was, and Seppes didn't know what to answer. Just at this time, a helicopter landed from the sky. Charlie suddenly became excited. He struggled to climb to a high place, while also shouting. Until the helicopter left, he still didn't want to give up and shouted loudly. Since then, Charlie began to not eat or drink, and his daily work was to draw full of pictures on his body. It seems like he is preparing for a ritual. Today, he accidentally saw how Seppes got out of the door. Immediately afterwards, he also tried to press the switch, and sure enough, he opened the door. Everything outside was very strange to Charlie, and he could only carefully find the exit. When he looked at himself in the mirror, he was immediately scared to death. Charlie broke the mirror and unexpectedly made the base emit an alarm sound. Charlie was stunned and could only run to the place with light. The gradually decreasing temperature made him more and more sure that the exit was in front of him when he pushed open the door with force. He finally saw the outside world. The helicopter overhead made Charlie very excited, and he stretched out his arms and ran desperately. Unexpectedly, he was hit by a part, but fortunately he was not injured. This incident made Seppes feel guilty. He thought that Charlie was also a human, and he also had the right to enjoy freedom, not to be locked up in a laboratory. So Seppes accelerated the research progress, and finally he found the answer in a local primitive tribe. Charlie had a special liking for helicopters because the god bird he mentioned looked like a helicopter. In that locality, the god bird was a symbol of the gods. At the time Charlie lived, due to the reversal of the electrodes, leading to food shortages, Charlie's tribe was on the brink of extinction. He believed that all of these things were the punishment of the gods for them. Therefore, Charlie wanted to sacrifice himself to compensate for the disaster. Even after 40,000 years, he still wanted to fulfill his mission. After knowing the truth, Seppes could not bear to treat Charlie as a research animal anymore. The two of them returned to Charlie's long-lost glacier. The ice and snow stretched out as far as the eye could see. The outside world helped Charlie find the feeling of being at home. But before the two of them could rejoice for long, the pursuing helicopter had arrived. What surprised them was that the loud explosion led to an avalanche, but Charlie still moved forward steadily. The next second, the snow and ice stopped Seppes. He shouted Charlie's name as hard as he could, but he didn't get a response. He could only watch Charlie disappear into the vast snowfield. Now, Charlie's only goal was to find the legendary bird god. At this moment, he finally completed his mission. He let go of his hands without regret. He let himself fall to the land he loved. Charlie painted the perfect ending for the film. Perhaps at the moment Charlie let go of his hands, he knew he would never see his family again. But he didn't feel any fear in his heart, but on the contrary, he was filled with hope, because deep down, he knew that he had finally saved his family and people. Even 40,000 years have passed. This belief has not been shaken. Okay, the last question of the movie is here. If humans can really be immortal through freezing, would you agree?